Can the police really throw the rightful owner out of a $2 million house? Could a woman, married into the family for just 6 months, strip away someone's entire history, turning family memories and legal rights into nothing with a single phone call? And if you're standing on your own front porch, facing your entire neighborhood with your new sister-in-law pointing her phone at your face and threatening 911, who do you think will actually have to leave? No one expects this to happen in a quiet Northern California suburb where every lawn is trimmed like a golf course, every neighbor knows your name, and news travels faster than you can blink. Right in front of me, Allison, my brother's new wife, was shouting, her face red, gripping her phone like it was a weapon. "Get out! I'm calling the police! You're trespassing!" Ethan, my brother, stood frozen behind her, eyes glued to the floor, unable to utter a single word. Just 5 minutes ago, I'd only planned to drop by and grab a few of our parents' old documents from the study. Now I was being pushed back, my back against the porch column, all eyes from across the street glued to me. The summer sky was cloudless, sunlight burning down on the driveway. Everything looked peaceful, but beneath it all was a battlefield. Allison pointed at me like I was some kind of dangerous criminal. "This is our home now. You have no right to be here. Leave." I laughed, a hard, brittle sound. It wasn't a laugh of amusement. It was a laugh for the sheer absurdity of it all, because I was the only one who knew, and Allison had no idea who really owned this house. The folder in my bag weighed on my shoulder like a stone. Inside, indisputable proof. Property deed, our parents' will, 3 years of paid property taxes, all in my name, Madison Carter. But Allison didn't care about documents. She didn't care about the history of this house. She cared about control, about erasing every trace of Ethan and me, turning our family story into our family, a new family where I no longer had a place. The whole scene felt like slow motion, gray stone steps, white wooden door, the geraniums my mother used to tend every spring. Everything was still here, but everything had changed. This was the place where Ethan and I used to chase each other through the yard, jump over flower beds, scream for joy every baseball season. It was where I watched my parents grow old, where my mother died 3 years ago one winter night, thanks to a drunk driver. It was the same place I signed papers letting Ethan live rent-free after he lost his job and his girlfriend left, just hoping he could get back on his feet. But no one expected things to end up like this. I looked at Allison, her blonde hair pulled back, designer dress hugging her figure, standing out in the midday sun. Who could have guessed that a woman who'd only been around for a few months could change the fate of an entire family? Allison kept pressing me toward the door, her fingers dancing on her phone, threatening and trembling all at once. "I said, leave, Madison. You have no business here." Ethan said nothing, his eyes glassy, hands once so steady, now grasping at air. I drew a breath, keeping my voice steady. "Are you sure you want to call the police, Allison?" She didn't answer, her teeth clenched as she dialed. "Have you ever been thrown out of your own home, all in the name of someone else's family security?" Down the block, Mom walked her dog past, pausing to look at me with sympathy. Behind curtains across the street, I could feel a dozen more eyes tracking every move. I wasn't backing down. I set my bag on the porch, pulled out the folder, not handing it over, just holding it. No explanations, no pleas. The air was thick. Wind whispered through the old maple trees. A country song played from the radio room, "Take Me Home, Country Roads," a cruel reminder. I kept wondering, when the police showed up, who would they believe? The one sobbing about an intruder, or the woman standing quietly with paperwork and nothing left to lose? Ethan looked at me, voice barely above a whisper. "Madison, maybe you should just leave for now." I looked at my brother, the person who used to be everything to me, and realized there was no going back from here. Allison sealed it with an icy line. "We have no room for liars or troublemakers in this family." Who could have guessed that the ultimate family showdown in America would be sparked by an outsider, armed with a few taps on a phone and an accusation? The red brick house stood silent, bearing witness to all the Carter family's tragedies. At that moment, the phone rang. A police siren echoed at the end of the block, growing louder. I stood tall, eyes forward, gripping my folder, ready for whatever was about to come, ready for every secret, every wound, every web of lies to be ripped open in the midday sun. Who do you think will have to leave this place? Who will really lose everything? And after all, what matters more? Legal rights or family loyalty? This is only the beginning of a storm no one saw coming. There's much more waiting behind this door. Are you ready to find out? Do you remember the moment your entire world fell apart? I still see it so clearly. My parents died in a car accident, coming home from their 32nd wedding anniversary. A drunk driver, a collision at midnight that tore through every normal day, every family ritual, every future we thought we had. That red brick house, 2 stories, white porch, creaking swing, suddenly became the only thing Ethan and I had left. No one ever expects a regular night to become the date that freezes all your memories in place, sealing them away in a thick layer of dust. The days after the funeral, Ethan and I moved around like shadows. He barely spoke, sitting for hours by the window, staring out at the maple trees Dad planted. I was no better. Every time I walked past my mother's old room, I had to fight to keep from crying. But there was one thing everyone knows. Someone has to be strong. For Ethan, for the house, for the past, and whatever future might still be possible. As the older child, I became the one in charge of all the documents, the executor of our parents' will. The house was left to me. Ethan received the savings and stocks. He never cared for managing property, and frankly, I was the only one calm enough to handle everything back then. Months passed. I buried myself in work, using busyness to try and drown the emptiness. Ethan, though, was falling apart. He lost his job at the design firm. His girlfriend of 3 years broke up with him. Friends drifted away. Some evenings, I'd pass the living room and see my brother hunched on the couch, head in his hands, shoulders shaking. No one thinks boys cry, but that night, I heard the tiny, choked sobs echoing through our big, empty house. That's when I knew Ethan couldn't do it alone. I begged him to move back in, to stay in the family house, not to worry about rent or bills. We're still a family. You can stay here as long as you need. Mom and Dad would want it that way, I told him one cold morning as we sat side by side with untouched cups of tea. He hesitated, eyes red and tired. I saw a flash of pride, but then he nodded. Thanks, Maddie. I'll try. After that, the house began to feel alive again. I still lived downtown, working crazy hours, but every Sunday I drove back for dinner with Ethan. It became our tradition, a fragile rope tying us to our parents and the past. Some days I'd find Ethan out in the yard, pruning Mom's hydrangeas, the sun on his face, the ghost of a smile on his lips. That small sign of hope kept me going. But something in the air was changing. One day, Ethan texted, "I've met someone. Her name is Allison." At first, I was happy for him. He told me about Allison, a petite blonde he'd met at a grief support group. She'd lost her husband in a work accident. They bonded instantly over shared pain. I thought maybe this was a second chance for my brother. But everything happened so fast. Just 3 months after meeting, Ethan announced they were getting married. I was stunned, barely able to ask questions before Ethan smiled that old half smile and said, "When you know, you know. Trust me, Maddie." The wedding was a simple courthouse ceremony, a handful of friends and relatives. Allison wore a bright white dress, a dazzling smile, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. At the small reception afterwards, Allison kept drawing Ethan away whenever I tried to talk to him. Her gaze at me was never quite warm, and sometimes just a little too sharp. But I told myself not to be paranoid. After all, Ethan deserved happiness. I gave them a generous wedding gift. Allison took the envelope, slid it into her purse before Ethan could even thank me. That night, I heard Ethan say, "our house," for the first time, not "my parents' house." It sent a shiver down my spine, but I forced myself to believe things would settle down. 2 weeks later, I came for Sunday dinner. The front door opened, and I barely recognized the place. Mom's antique console table was gone, replaced by a shiny white sideboard. The beige walls had been painted sterile white. Family photos vanished. Ethan tried to explain, "Allison wanted to redecorate. She's got a good eye, Maddie." Allison appeared in the kitchen, pastel apron perfectly tied, a smile that never quite touched her eyes. "Madison, right on time. Ethan, take her coat, honey." The whole night, I felt like a stranger in my own home. The old floral sofa had been replaced with a cold leather one, the family bookshelf gone. Even the cherished china was missing. At dinner, Allison asked about my single life, joked about my biological clock, and laughed at my answer when I said I loved my job. Then, out of nowhere, she talked about renovating the kitchen, explaining, "the mortgage is paid off so we can afford it." I felt something inside me freeze. I glanced at Ethan. He away. Later, I pulled him aside. "Does she know I own the house?" He shook his head, almost whispering, "Please, Maddie, just let it go for now. She thinks I own it." In that moment, I realized everything was slipping away. But I also knew, no matter how much someone tried to erase the past, there are truths that can't be wiped out.
Have you ever watched your own brother turn into a stranger in just a matter of months? Can you imagine someone marrying into your family and, in less than half a year, erasing every trace of your history? One piece of furniture, one photograph, one memory at a time? And if everything you loved, your parents' heirlooms, your childhood treasures, your family's legacy, were being sold off online, would you stay silent, walk away, or fight back? You might think this only happens in dramatic TV shows, but I was living this nightmare right here in suburban America, where every house keeps its own secrets behind neatly trimmed hedges. Stay with me, because what happened next will make anyone wonder. What's worth more, 4 walls or the last bit of family you have left? It all came to a head on a drizzly afternoon. I drove to the house, rain blurring my vision as questions churned in my mind. The red brick house sat silent. Through the windows, I could see new, cold curtains, shutting out not just sunlight, but any glimpse of the past. I gripped the spare key Mom left me, stepped inside, and hoped for some sense of home. But the first thing I felt was emptiness. The living room walls, once covered with family photos, now bore only tiny holes and faint shadows where the frames had hung. The armchair where Mom used to read was gone. So was the Tiffany lamp that once warmed up every winter evening. I looked at Ethan, hoping for a smile, a word, a hand reaching out. But my brother looked down, avoiding my gaze. Allison stepped from the kitchen, her blonde hair sleek, lips painted red, eyes flashing something I couldn't read. Quote, "Madison, "You really should call ahead next time." End quote. I drew a breath, trying to hold it together. Quote, "Where's the lamp, the books, the old clock from the hallway?" End quote. Allison shrugged, cool as ever. Quote, "Those things were just taking up space. We donated most of them. Some we sold online. It's time for a fresh start, don't you think?" End quote. I turned to Ethan, desperate for a sign of resistance. But all I got was a gentle shake of his head, eyes down, like a little boy caught doing something wrong. Have you ever witnessed the moment someone you love the most steps away from you? Emotionally, spiritually, even physically? It didn't stop at missing heirlooms. Every visit, something else disappeared. I checked online antique shops and saw not just a few knickknacks, but Dad's entire first edition book collection, Grandma's silver bowl, even the china from my mother's wedding. One day, I noticed Allison's laptop open, the auction site still on the screen. Front and center, my mother's Tiffany lamp, the listing boasting genuine antique, perfect condition, $800 or best offer. My stomach twisted. I knew then, this wasn't about making a new space. This was about erasure. I tried to talk to Ethan. We sat together on the porch, rain pattering on the steps. I asked, "Do you want this? Do you want to erase everything about Mom and Dad?" He was silent for a long time. The rain filled the gap. Finally, he exhaled. Quote, "It's complicated, Maddie. I just want peace. Allison needs to feel this is her home too. I don't want to fight anymore." End quote. It stung, like a cold slap, but I understood. Not everyone has the strength to hang on to the past, especially when grief still has its claws deep inside. Some people will always choose quiet, even if it means giving up a piece of themselves. Then I discovered the house deeds and important documents were missing from Dad's old desk. I rummaged through every drawer. Nothing. Something felt very wrong. I asked Ethan. He stammered, quote, "Allison thought we should keep everything in one place. She's been organizing." End quote. I didn't buy it. So I checked every auction website I could. Under Allison's username, dozens of my family's treasures appeared. The clock, old paintings, even childhood photos of Ethan and me. I printed out everything. Now I knew what I had to do. Maybe I'd been too patient, too forgiving, but family isn't something you let others sell away piece by piece. Allison's next move was the final straw. She changed the locks, blocked my number, and sent me a cold message. Quote, "You can pick up what's left in storage. Do not come to our house unannounced again." End quote. I went to the storage unit, used the code Allison sent. Inside, a few old boxes. Mom's winter coats, some battered pots, high school textbooks. Nothing I'd asked for. No photos, no letters, none of my mother's treasures. I sat on the cold concrete floor, staring at those boxes, feeling a wave of anger and loss like nothing I'd ever known. I wondered how many families lose everything because they're too scared to stand up. How many memories are swept away because someone needs a fresh start and forgets the past still matters. Maybe you've faced something like this. Maybe you've had to choose, fight for your history or let it go. But I couldn't let go, not this time. It was time to act, time to fight for everything or be left with nothing. Have you ever stood at the edge, ready to decide what's truly yours? Think about it. Sometimes what you think you've lost, you can get back if you're willing to fight. Don't look away. What comes next is a showdown no one could have predicted.
Have you ever wondered what happens when a family's biggest secret is forced into the open, right in front of everyone? Have you ever seen your own brother caught between two worlds? His wife on one side, his sister on the other, completely paralyzed, unable to choose? And what if, when the police show up, every legal document is laid out on the living room table, and someone is exposed in front of the whole neighborhood? If you think this only happens in dramatic American TV, you haven't lived through a real-life nightmare. Picture this. On a Sunday evening, what used to be family tradition, I came back to that red brick house with a folder in my hand and no intention of backing down. The sun had just set, a thin mist curling around the white picket fence. I passed Ethan's car parked by the curb, the flower pots Mom once tended, and rang the front door. Inside, jazz music blared, loud enough to drown out conversation. I rang the bell. No answer. But I knew they were home. Through the window, I saw Allison setting the table, Ethan hunched over his phone. I knocked again, louder this time. The door swung open. Allison appeared, face blank, no hint of a smile. "Madison, it's not a good time. Please leave." I kept my voice steady. "I won't stay long. I just need 5 minutes with my brother." Ethan stood up, eyes flickering away. I stepped inside, scanning every detail that had changed. There was nothing left of the Carter family's past. I set my folder on the coffee table, spoke plainly. "We need to talk about the house, about everything that's happened." Allison folded her arms, voice sharp. "There's nothing to talk about. Ethan and I live here. You need to respect our space." I turned to Ethan. "Tell her the truth, Ethan. Tell her who owns this house." Silence. Allison fired back. "Ethan inherited the house, just like he told me. He can do whatever he wants." I opened my folder, pulled out the deed, the will, 3 years of tax bills, all proof. This was no longer just about feelings. This was the law. I slid the documents across the table. "You can read. The house is mine. I let Ethan live here so he could get back on his feet. But now, after everything, selling family heirlooms, changing the locks, treating me like a stranger, it's over." Allison stared at the documents for a long moment, then grabbed them up. Her face went white. Ethan looked at me, desperate. But Allison wouldn't give up. She threw the documents down, yelling, "You're lying! This is our house! I'll call the police!" She pulled out her phone and dialed 911, hands trembling, but her voice trying to sound strong. "I need police at 1156 Maple Lane. My husband's sister is trying to take our house. She's threatening us." Ethan collapsed on the sofa, head in his hands. I sat opposite him, hands folded, waiting. It took less than 10 minutes for the police sirens to ring down the street. 2 officers, one calm, older man, and a young woman, entered. Allison rushed over, tears streaming. "Officers, thank God you're here. She's trespassing. She won't leave." The officer turned to me. "Can we see your ID and any documents regarding the property?" I handed them everything, calm and clear. He studied the documents, his suspicion melting into understanding. He said, carefully, "Ma'am, according to these documents, you are the legal owner of this property. They've been living here with your permission." Allison froze. Ethan said nothing, his hands shaking in his lap. The officer turned to Allison. "Ma'am, unless you have proof of ownership, you cannot force her out. If there are further disputes, they need to be handled in civil court." Allison began to sob, shouting, slamming her hand on the table. She grabbed a crystal vase and hurled it to the floor, glass shattering. The younger officer stepped in. "Please calm down. If you continue destroying property, we'll have to ask you to leave or make an arrest." The tension in the room was suffocating. Allison looked at Ethan, begging for support. He shook his head, eyes red, unable to speak. I stood up, exhaustion washing over me. The officer asked gently, "Would you like to press charges for the damaged property?" I shook my head.
No, I just want my family back. But deep down, I knew. There was no going back. Allison stormed out, slamming the door so hard a picture fell off the wall. Ethan sat alone in the living room, surrounded by broken glass, the perfect image of a marriage shattered to pieces. Have you ever watched a family split apart in a single day? Can you forgive someone you love when they turn their back on you? If you've ever felt that, you know the worst loss isn't the house or the possessions. It's losing the person you thought would always be by your side. But sometimes it's only when the truth comes out that you have a real chance to start over. Will Ethan choose family, or will he keep hiding in the shadows of a toxic marriage? And for me, after all this, what can I possibly save from a childhood, a past that was once so beautiful? Maybe the answer only comes when night truly falls. Are you ready to face the truth?
What do you think is left after a legal battle, after tears, after every lie has been exposed? Does winning on paper mean you get everything back? Or do you end up staring at an emptiness nothing can fill? Can a person who shares your blood ever truly come back to you after letting someone else destroy everything you once held sacred? If you've ever stood at the crossroads between forgiveness and rage, you know. Some losses can't be measured in money, only in the cracks that open up inside you. That night, I stayed in the red brick house. For the first time in months, I wandered through each room like a stranger, searching for pieces of herself. The jazz music was gone. Only the tick of the old wall clock marked the hours. Every wall, every window frame, every scratch in the wood whispered of days gone by. I passed my mother's bedroom. It had been painted over, a cold, sterile white replacing the soft pink my father had chosen for her. The closet was empty. Drawers pulled out, nothing left but dust. I opened the window, letting the night air drift in, carrying the faint scent of jasmine my mother once tended every evening. That night, Ethan didn't come home. His message was brief. I need some time. I'm at a hotel. I'm sorry, Maddie. No explanations, no promises. I didn't reply. I lay on the old bed, listening to the house breathe around me in the dark. Have you ever felt your whole world shrink to a few silent square feet? I remembered Sunday dinners, Mom's pancakes, Dad reading the paper, Ethan sketching cartoons on the table. All of it felt like a dream that had been auctioned away, one piece at a time by a stranger's hand. The next morning, Ethan came back, looking hollow, dark circles under his eyes. We sat at the kitchen table, saying nothing for a long while. Ethan clutched his coffee mug, hands trembling. I never meant for things to get this bad, Maddie. I looked at him, feeling a mix of pity and anger. He told me, voice low, that he'd let Allison believe he owned the house from the start, wanting to keep a shred of dignity after losing everything else. Allison liked that I was stable. She needed someone who looked like they had it all together. But that one lie had trapped Ethan in a cycle he couldn't escape. Allison controlled every dollar, every relationship, every trace of the past. Whenever Ethan tried to push back, Allison would cry, say she was scared of being abandoned, then turn cold, distant, gradually cutting him off from anyone who might help. I listened, holding back tears. No one expects to see their brother cry. But now, Ethan's voice trembled, head in his hands, desperate to hide from the truth. She's not all bad. She helped me when I was broken, but she wanted everything to be about her. She sold things, changed the house, told me we had to move on. I tried to hide some family things in the attic, but she found them all. I put a hand on his shoulder and managed.
You don't have to lose yourself to keep someone else happy." Ethan buried his face in his arms, silent for a long, long time. But things still weren't over. That afternoon, Allison returned, papers in hand, eyes red from crying, but mouth set firm. "I spoke with a lawyer. As Ethan's wife, I have rights to this house, marital property, improvements, emotional investment. You can't just kick me out." Calmly, I showed her my lawyer's letter. "You're welcome to contest it in court, but all the so-called improvements are just cosmetic. An emotional investment doesn't trump the deed." Allison shook, flinging the papers on the table, voice rising. "You'll regret this, both of you." She gathered her things and left, in the middle of the day, leaving the house strangely quiet. That night, Ethan sat at the table, sketching a floor plan of the house, marking what was lost, what was left. We worked together to make lists, filed police reports, and contacted auction websites. We couldn't get everything back, but at least a few treasures were returned. Each one was like gluing back a piece of our history, even if only for now. Have you ever watched someone dear get lost and then find their way home? If you have, you know that feeling. Equal parts pain and hope, tinged with the fear that next time you won't get there in time. Ethan and I stopped talking so much about the past. We'd sit on the porch in the evenings, watching the sunlight fade over the grass, breathing in the air we'd fought so hard to keep. But deep wounds take time. Would my brother be strong enough to start over? And could I ever truly forgive, or would I just carry the scar forever? If you've ever been through something like this, tell me how it felt, because only those who have lost and gotten back their home truly understand its value.
Have you ever wondered what happens when the truth finally comes out? A confrontation that feels like it belongs in a movie, but it's happening right in your own battered family kitchen. Some people believe once the lawyers and police have spoken, the story is over. But in America, sometimes the ending is only the start of a whole new battle. The struggle to heal, to rebuild from ruins, to reclaim what can never be measured in dollars. Would you believe that the very person who was pushed out of her own home could turn that place into a sanctuary? A place of rebirth for both siblings? After the day Allison stormed out, the red brick house was eerily quiet. Each morning, sunlight crept through the kitchen window, falling across the scars and the wooden table Dad once built by hand. And I realized, now, the house was truly mine, but the sense of victory was nothing like what I'd imagined. No more shouting matches. No more footsteps pounding through the hallway, threatening to erase me from my own life. Just two siblings, Madison and Ethan, returning to something almost like childhood, and yet never the same. One morning, I asked Ethan, "Do you miss her?" He stared out at the backyard, golden light slipping through the maple leaves. He took a long time to answer. Finally, "Sometimes. Not because of love, because I'm afraid I'll never trust myself again." I understood. The deepest wounds aren't always inflicted by others. They're from letting someone else break your boundaries, rewrite your memories, strip you down to nothing. We began to fix up the house, not by repainting everything or buying fancy furniture, by restoring what had been lost. Each rescued item from the auction, every old book, black and white photo, and chipped piece of Mom's pottery, found its way back home. One day, Ethan found a small box, old birthday cards, faded valentines from Mom's secret drawer, saved for decades. We sat together in the living room and cried like children. No one expects to see a grown man cry. But that day, I wasn't surprised to see Ethan wipe his eyes, shoulders shaking. Gradually, Ethan's old friends returned. Some just stopped by to say hello. Some sat in silence for hours over coffee, telling stories that had nothing to do with pain or loss.
the house felt lighter, no longer burdened by the pressure to look successful or fear that anyone might erase what we loved most. I nudged Ethan to reach out to his former company, send them a few drawings and ideas. Amazingly, they hired him back as a freelancer, giving him a chance to start over, as himself, not as anyone else. One afternoon, while we painted the kitchen window frames, I asked, "If you could start over, would you change anything?" Ethan grinned, a stripe of paint across his forehead. Maybe I'd speak up sooner. Maybe I'd ask for help. But maybe I had to lose everything to see what really matters. That answer stuck with me for a long time. One thing was clear. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's learning to move forward, even if the wounds haven't fully healed. I learned to let the past be past, not to control everything, not to force Ethan to become the perfect little brother from our childhood. Ethan learned to stand on his own feet, not letting anyone else define his worth, not being afraid to begin again. Most evenings, we'd sit together on the front steps, watching darkness settle over the neighborhood, listening to the crickets, letting go, bit by bit, of everything that had weighed us down. Have you ever forgiven the one who hurt you most? Are you strong enough to open your heart, to believe in new chances? If someone comes to mind, a sibling, a friend, or even yourself, maybe now is the time to send a simple message. Sometimes that's all it takes to open a new chapter in someone's life. Night falls, the kitchen glows warm and yellow behind me. And I know, I've survived every loss, and I'm home again at last. But there's still one more choice to make, a final decision about the house and about both of us. Do you want to know what we did next? Stay with me, because the real ending is still to come.
If one day you had to choose, keep the childhood home or let it go so your family could truly move forward, which would you pick? Does an inheritance mean anything when it's just bricks and lumber? Or does its real value lie in the memories and the people who shared every inch of it with you? Most people think winning the battle is enough for happiness, but real happiness sometimes comes from letting go, from sharing, from the simple decision that changes everything. That's exactly where Ethan and I found ourselves. On a golden summer afternoon, after the storm had finally passed and laughter was returning to the house, we sat together on the front steps, glasses of iced tea in hand, the garden finally cleared of weeds, the air humming with cicadas. Ethan was quiet for a long time, then turned to me and said, "Madison, maybe it's time we talk about what's next for this house." I nodded. I'd been waiting for this. Ethan was no longer the lost boy he'd once been. He'd survived the hell of manipulation, rebuilt himself from the ashes of a toxic marriage, and finally found the strength to ask himself, what do I actually want? So had I. After everything, I no longer clung to things just out of fear of losing them. I wanted to share. I wanted this house to truly belong to both of us. Not a battlefield of old wounds, but a home, open for family for generations. We met with a lawyer and planned out a family trust for the house. It was no longer just mine, no longer a place where Ethan felt like a guest, ashamed of needing help. It became both of ours, a legacy, always open for anyone in the family, even the generations to come. The paperwork was signed on a bright, beautiful day, and I saw a kind of relief on Ethan's face I'd never seen before. This was our real victory, not beating someone else, but beating our own fear, our pain, our need to control. Time passed. The red brick house filled again with laughter, with Sunday dinners, with afternoons of gardening, fixing windows, inviting friends for simple parties. Ethan's friends came back. I started reaching out to neighbors, even the ones who'd whispered after the police came. We didn't talk about the past much anymore. We all understood. To have today, we'd had to fight through more than anyone knew. The day Ethan moved into his new apartment, a bright little place near his work, I helped him pack, quietly wrapping every photo, every rescued book. Before he left, Ethan hugged me for a long time. "Thanks for everything, Maddie. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you." I smiled, squeezed his shoulder. "You did the hard work, Ethan. This house will always be your home." And in that moment, I realized I wasn't afraid of being alone anymore. What we'd been through just made me value this peace even more. That summer, I'd sometimes sit alone on the porch, watching the sunset gold across the lawn. I felt small again, like a 5-year-old, like when Mom and Dad were still alive. I finally understood. Home is where you can return no matter what happens out in the world. And yes, some losses can never be replaced, but there's always a chance to start again, to live honestly, to never let anyone take your worth from you again. Have you ever had to choose, cling to the past, or give it away to build something new? If you have, share your story. You never know. Someone out there might need just a little hope to get up from their own pain. Thank you for listening, for staying with me through every step of this journey. Our paths are all different, but everyone deserves to be the owner of their own home, even if it's just a quiet place in your heart.